Good evening. Um, Everybody's doing well tonight. Hey, Michael, how are you tonight? You working on something this evening? Excellent, excellent. This is a finished page that we were working on last week. This was really just an exercise. I had a piece of just cut Bristol, and I was struggling with getting some stuff finished, so I wanted to finish something to get my feet rolling. And anytime I draw Helena, I can, see the finish line. I can get it done. It's a comfortable way for me to really finish something that, and getting in that habit, getting those good habits going again. You know, um, Another thing I've been doing recently with the ink wash is at the grocery store we get these brown paper bags. So I've been cutting off the panels and drawing on them with the wash and different types of white media to try to find my midtones and things. This is just a brown paper bag that I cut pieces off, just doing figure studies, faces. I tried doing some superheroes the other day. There's the Hulk and Captain America. Just having fun with reusing paper. They, at my old where I used to live, they gave us plastic bags and we'd reuse them for all sorts of things. So when they started giving us paper, I tried to figure out a way to use them. And that's the stuff I've been working on outside. There's that headshot we did last week. And this is the page I'm working on tonight. As you can see, it's we've got the correlator saying something very convincingly. He's got some dialogue going on in this panel, and then he's talking to Professor Prawn. He's a little concerned, and he's very concerned about what's going on. And then Professor Prawn, reassures him of what's going on, and we're off to the races. I did pick up something at the comic book store. I don't know if anyone hit up the shop this week. I got the last issue of Conan, and I got it for a very low price. It's a reader copy. I just never read it before. And our regular Jonathan went with me, and he gave me some Conans that he didn't want in his collection. And one of them was actually the first appearance of Zula, which very exciting for a long-time Conan reader. I got some other stuff. If people want to chat comics later, we can do that. But I'm going to get into the inking because that's what I am here to do, and I got work to get done. I'm going to keep working on this panel here that I'd already started. Let me get this ink brush going. I did some of the ruler work while I was off camera, so people didn't have to watch the really boring bits as much. I'll have to do some ruler work, but not right away. This is just what I call my fill brush. It's a Kuretake brush pen that's been wore out. The bristles are shot, but I can still use it to fill with my favorite ink, which is the Winsor Newton, or no, the Phil Martin's Black Star Matte. Excuse me. Been using that for a long time. I really like it. It flows well. It's got a nice finish to it. It's got that good matte finish. I used to like the Speedball ink when I was a kid with the little shinier finish, but I don't know. I grew away from that as I explored it and tried to do different things with it. Do things like ink wash. This does a great wash. It creates a nice tone, nice consistent tone that you can get those wonderful little pools of different intensities. I did get a little inking done on this head here on my lunch break, but not very much, as you can see. It's more or less just roughing out where the figurehead is going to be. Hope everybody was okay with all the crazy wind and weather in the New England area. I know we've got viewers from all over the country. I'm sorry, I don't know what the weather's like in your neck of the woods. As I mentioned in my description of my video, I will be closing my online store for an indeterminate amount of time to fully commit to working on all the Kickstarter materials I have. I don't want any distractions or having to like stop everything to go ship a random comic book. So if anybody wants anything from that, you have till Sunday, and then it'll be closed for however long it needs to be closed. I always enjoy inking hair. It's a different challenge. There's all different types of hair, different textures. Some people have curly hair, some people have straight hair, wavy hair. It's a fun challenge. In this case, for this shot of the correlator, we've got Professor Prawn in front of this giant tank here. And this is our main light source, so that's why you see the heavy shadows sort of shaping around it. And then areas where there's different elevations from his skull, there's different levels of light reflecting. So that's why you see different little reflections. I can talk, yeah. Yes, I can. Day started early today. I was up at like 5:30, so bear with me. I might mumble a little here and there. I'm going to switch brush pens. I'm going to grab the not best of bristle one. It's in my bag here. My bag of tricks. Anybody can get one of those just like that. It's just a large Ziploc bag. So if you've got a big Ziploc bag and you can put your art supplies in it, then there's your bag of tricks. Ziploc bags drawn on recycled shopping bags. Can you tell I'm used to working with a no budget? And I like a creative challenge. I like stuff that makes me look at things with a different eye. And I know everyone would say, like, oh, didn't you realize that you had paper bags around? You could have been doing that the whole time. But I was presented with a new source and volume with my grocery store being now only paper bags. I wanted to do something with them. Hey, Matt, thanks for sharing the listing for today. Hope all is going well with the production of New Zodiacs 2, part 2. Continuation of the Liberators story. And you guys announced you're working with Keith Champagne on his book. That's exciting. You guys are putting together a whole line of motion comics. Hey, how's it going? It's going well. Thank you. I really do enjoy panel to panel work. That's my favorite kind of work. Covers are nice and all, but I don't get the same satisfaction out of working on them as I do a good storytelling page. I'm just filling this in here with my nice brush just so I don't have to keep switching back and forth. I should have refilled it before I started. Oop, I've got some little window in front of me. There we go. Hey, Dennis. I'm doing all right. I'm enjoying working on this page here. I showed earlier the finished piece. We've got a bunch of different people. I guess I jumped the gun with showing stuff off. This is that finished piece from last week that Helena study. And these are those brown paper bags that I get at the grocery store. And I just cut off panels and I'll put little drawings on them. Stuff like that. Hey, Chad. Good to see you. There's a little bit of a visual gag here that if you've never had to raise brine shrimp or anything, or you wouldn't know, is that, raising brine shrimp or sea monkeys, as they're called, all it takes is a jar of water, an air bubbler, a source of light, and salt. So that's what you see here, this light. There's going to be these little little tube coming up, and then you see like the water's bubbling, just like, you'd see in any fish tank. This panel has a lot going for it, and we did the reward where you know you get a random page of original art. To me, this is an important page because it introduces the plan going forward, and it's the first panel appearance of Professor Prawn. Hello again, Matt. Yes. I recommend these Kiritaki brush pens. These are my favorite. It's a sable brush tip. They're great. You can pretty much ink anything with them. I also use these pit pens whenever I can. And then these are also the Kiritaki. It's almost like a felt tip pen, but it has, a flex to it. These are nice. I get those pretty much all on jet pens. I can get the pit pens at your local like Blick or Art Supply, but it's hard to find the Kiritaki one. So I order them on a site called Jet Pens. They do not sponsor me, so that is just a legitimate. I like their stuff. And here's Jay Kennedy. How are you, man? Yeah, I'm just working hard on getting pages done. I got a lot of pages to finish. And I've got people willing to help me out with the flats, and we raised money to hire Jesse when I get into that portion. I do enjoy drawing the little shrimp guy, Professor Prawn. He's a lot of fun to draw. I don't know if I'll ever get asked to draw him at a convention. It might be one of those where if somebody asks for an undersea hero, I might have to like sneak him in there. But you see, when you erase the little bits of pencils that are there, you can see the effect. Shoveling snow. We are fully like melted where we are. We now have we had rain all day. I mean all night. And then we had some rain and heavy winds, but we ran out of snow pretty early actually. I had to actually buy like a pass to park my car in a garage because I didn't know where. I'm new in the area and I didn't know if there were any like emergency lots, if there was like a snow emergency. So I didn't have to like dig out or scrape off my car, but I did have to, write a check for that luxury. It was windy. There were, up to 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts out here, so it was ripping, as they say. Aside from work today, I had the pleasure of having to send follow-up emails chasing people that owe me some money on some stuff, so that's always fun. It's one of the things I'll always be critical of in our industry. Chad has a question. We'll highlight that. Chad asks, what, if anything, is the hardest part of the inking process? To me, the hardest part of the inking process can be the technical end, like doing the heavy ruler work. For me, my natural stroke for an ink line is curved. Sometimes it's got a little bit of a bend to it. When you look at any inker or any artist that draws in ink, you can see what they're comfortable doing. And I think mine's pretty apparent in my drawing. I've started to let go of that because I grew up in an era where comic inking was supposed to be slick and um, shiny. Everything was supposed to be shiny and have this nice, swift looking line and take forever to ink like very little bit. And I grew out of that. I like a chunky line now. I like lines that have more of a like a less predictable finish to it. Um, I have a hard time being super clean with my inks, so that's a thing that's challenging for me. So like when I did the kids version of Ninja Turtles, that was a real challenge because they had such strict guidelines for how they wanted it to look, and they wanted a very tight finish to those lines. For me, inking became part of the drawing process. I know that for a long time they were treated as like this separate discipline because it was an assembly line to build a comic book. But because I am doing the whole thing, I don't have to give all the information there. You can see there's a looseness to this. Like I don't tell you how thick these lines need to be when it's done. I'm really just giving the structure and I'm building it out while I'm inking. I'm doing more thinking as I go. There's still creative decisions being made. I'm deciding, like on this, I wanted it to be a little bit more like not a telephone wire, but like just have like one of those HVAC tubes, you know, had texture to it. Because like the Correlator's undersea sub looks beat up and old, but it still has like technology in it that's like beyond what we have, but it's built on very familiar visual benchmarks. So when I put those little things in there, it's because I want you to be like, oh well, that's like one of those stretchy tubes. It's a little niftier. It'll be colored fancy, but there's some things that people recognize even in a piece of genre science fiction goofiness to make the world a little more believable, so that the jokes have some context. These are other little shrimp scientists, which phrases like shrimp scientists make me very happy. Like, I did pick up like a new issue that was like a whole bunch of Aquaman undersea characters. I doubt they got a shrimp scientist. We have 3 on this one page. They're doing shrimp mad science things. There was a period of time where inking fell out of fashion and they were just darkening the pencils and digitally coloring those. I know that that was popular for a little while. Do you folks like inked comics more, or do you like that really soft edge where it's got more of a it's almost like a painterly look because there's no hard line to it. I just happen to like ink lines. I really do. This guy has a little clipboard. He's looking at this device in front of him and taking very important shrimp science notes. Hey, Jonathan. Shrimp science. I'm glad, Julie. I'm glad you appreciate shrimp science. Yes. Shrimp mad science. I don't know. He's just doing shrimp science. Maybe all shrimp science is mad. At this point, I don't even know. We're gonna have to find a good shrimp scientist. Professor Prawn is definitely a mad scientist, a mad shrimp scientist. I always think of those parts of like the Muppets where you'd see all the different rats like doing working at the diner, like in the Muppets Take Manhattan. It's like they're just doing a normal job, but they just happen to be a whole bunch of rats. There we go. Nice little clipboard. Professor Prawn always looks a little unhinged, so when you draw him, his eyes are usually really wide. I don't know. I don't think it's clever at all. It's just lazy cartooning that I did to give make him look like I gave him a big bushy mustache and like the Albert Einstein hair. That was the extent of my designing the leader of the evil shrimp group. He's just fun to draw. It's just such a silly idea. I have no idea how I think all my friends here kind of get what's going on with this book and like they're kind of into it, but I'd be interested to hear what like a mass audience or like a crowdsourcing would think of it like. What the like they do a survey on the way out of like a movie, like those pre-screens to try to make like crowdsource a movie plot and make it a movie that more people want to go see rather than like just a film. like an artistic film. Jay's done those surveys. Jay has done like he at one point he was doing a bunch of surveys. Jay Kennedy was shaping the products and films of tomorrow with his information for like getting paid $20 to do a survey. Like, watch this movie, take this survey. I've only ever been inked by other people a handful of times in my career. I've mostly inked myself. Um, that's probably both good and bad. It's given me a lot of practice to come up with my own distinct look because I don't think anybody's ink line looks like mine. For better or worse, I think if you see me ink someone else, which I've done plenty of times, you can see my hand in it. Like I've inked Chris Campana on a few covers and a few things. And it's a fun exercise to try to ink someone else. Bewildered Biscuit, how are you? It is I, where you can find me pretty much every Wednesday for a long time now. I have not even looked back to see how many episodes we've done. We might need to do like an anniversary show or something. It might be time for a variety show or a clip special where they go back and just show a whole bunch of clips. Like this was that time that he drew a sketch cover and people watched it. I don't know. What did Bob Ross do? Hey, Daryl. Hey, good to see you. You've been drawing up a storm, right? I'm doing all right. Happy New Year to you as well. We all now have to remember to put a 4 in place of the 3 when we sign our name on our pictures, which I think I've successfully done on the stuff I have finished this year. It usually takes me a little while. I am live here currently, yes. My friend Andrew posted my Red Sonja cover, and I gave kind of an explanation of like the whole concept of the piece and like why the characters are doing certain things. It was in one of the Conan groups. It was kind of like I don't know, a director's commentary kind of explanation as to what's going on in the piece. I never know if that's what people want or if they want the art to speak for itself. I don't know if people like an explanation of what the piece means and what the story is of it, or if they just want, to have their own interpretation, which I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. So I think that's super important. The other thing I like about Undersea Hero that's fun to draw is that, like, just because it's drawn cartoony doesn't mean it's not, drawn correct or well. I think there's a misnomer that, a cartoony or simplified drawing is not like it technically sound when I think it actually has to be. It's more important because you have fewer lines. Craig Russo, a friend of mine who did a cover for Undersea Hero, he's a master of that. He truly is. Picking the right lines to put down. Hey, it's Desiree. How are you, Desiree? We here in this region are watching our baseball teams sink into the ocean, while the Dodgers become, the dynasty of baseball. There's this little shrimp tail. Gotta have the shrimp tail. I just think it's so silly that it curls forward, and then they have these two little feet that just stick out the bottom. I think it would make a very funny person in a suit that is shot in a suit, but then like is still this tall on screen. I don't know. If the drawing makes me laugh, I generally try to find a way to keep it and put it in the story or a story, or I'll build a story around it somehow. Hey, it's showtime! It's showtime, LA again. You know, they're going to be exciting to watch. I'm glad we were able to give you the Mookie Betts foundational pieces. It's so bad. They're not even like trying to sign mediocre free agents for the Red Sox right now. I promise I won't complain about the Red Sox the whole time. We have a question from Gilberto right here. Gilberto asks, what do you think of 80s and 90s comic art styles? Well, they're so varied. If you're thinking about the 80s and 90s comic art styles and referring to like superhero ones from like DC and Marvel, I mean, I think in the 80s they were pretty varied, but in the 90s, like it was really just the excess of like the image style. Is that what you're referring to? Because I mean, there were so many different styles. But I have fun with a lot of it. One of the complaints that people levy against me is that I like too many things. Um, and I like a lot of 80s comics. I like a lot of 90s comics. I mean, you look at Stray Bullets had such a different style from what was going on at Image. Um, the Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld style, Zzz, and the Todd McFarlane style. Those different Image House styles. I like Eric Larson's work quite a bit to this day. I think he is a terrific cartoonist and storyteller. Um, in the 80s, I liked a ton of artists. A lot of my old time artists were still producing great stuff. Alex Toth remains one of my favorite artists and just a constant source of inspiration. He's an artist that I can look at his work and just marvel at the creativity of the shot choices and the absolutely wonderful ways that he would compose a story and a shot. Like he never had just a straight ahead face coming forward. It's always cropped interestingly. How do you like 80s and 90s artwork? Is that your favorite artwork? Because that was, when I was 10 years old, it was, 1994. So that was the middle of that rise in that style. One thing I am nostalgic for of that era is some of the production values. I know that that's like a weird thing to say, but just the paper it was on, the coloring techniques, the way they lettered, you know. And in the 80s, there were so many like different independents doing amazing things, like, from Mirage to New England Comics to Renegade Press. I actually got to meet some of the editors from Renegade Press at San Diego this year. That was fantastic. They came up and were looking at my stuff, and we introduced one another, and they had mentioned that they worked at Renegade, and I liked quite a few of the books that came through there. So I was able to pay them some nice compliments and had a nice conversation after that. The antennae are super important for the shrimp. Gotta get those in there. Little shrimp scientists making evil little experiments for the correlator. Let's get the edge of that tank. Put a nice thick line on it. There we go, like this. You like horror comics? Oh, very nice. Yeah. Yeah, plenty of great horror artists of all time, like Bernie Wrightson. He's one of the greatest to ever decide to draw comics. All the great artists from EC Comics, like Jack Davis, Jack Kamen, Kurtzman came through there, Al Feldstein. Bernard Krigstein was one of my favorites, still is. Al Williamson. Steve Ditko did some great horror comics for Charlton, another company that put out a ton of horror comics. I don't know why I made this little thing that he's looking at, but it seemed important at the time, so I did. We've got to ink in the little platform here. The phrase "I can't even draw a straight line with a ruler" comes to mind. I definitely need a ruler to draw a straight line. Always a lot of shadow work and heavy contrast in horror comics. I've drawn a few myself. I've got some short stories I've written. If as long as Undersea Hero gets done on time and everything goes according to plan, I'm hoping to do some of those stories this coming fall. It's crazy to think that I've already booked up the year until then, but that's where we're at. Thanks to you folks. Decided to back my silly Kickstarter. I'll be working on these comics for quite some time. This is a really hard line to do on camera, so I'm thinking about leaving it until I'm off camera. So we might draw some of these characters down here next. Gotten some new people popping in the last couple of weeks. That's been really nice. Gilberto, thanks for the first comment. I think I've seen from you. There we go. We've got a good professor there in front of his little minions as they work on this big experiment. And in this case, there's going to be a speech bubble here, or excuse me, a speech balloon here, and one here. So like part of this will be covered up and part of this will be covered up. But I want to have those lines there so that you can see where I can see where it's going to be. It makes it easier for lettering. Oh, excuse me. Like I said, my day started at 5 something, so forgive the occasional yawn. See, right now I'm still drawing. I kind of ballparked where I wanted certain things, but to me it didn't look like it was bubbling. Sorry for the stutter there. Happens when I get tired. Sometimes the old stutter will rear its ugly head. So something I try to work on still since I was a kid. I should move that up a little bit. I'm sorry. Right now I'm just spacing it out because I don't want it to look like the dots are necessarily reacting to the other items in the composition. We've got some little shrimpies in here. And again, when this is reduced, like some of these little elements, no one's going to notice, but I think it adds to the overall realism and believability of the world that we're trying to create. Yeah, I know it's not quite like seeing Batman get drawn or one of those IPs or superheroes that people have read for many, many years, but there's something exciting about something new coming to market, I believe. Something that no one's ever seen before. I'll be interested to see what happens and what people think. I'm gonna draw some of the bubbles underneath too. I thought about doing the comic in black and white. I thought about doing it in watercolors because it's undersea and water and all that stuff, but I opted for the classic vintage coloring, the four color process with the limited color palette of a different era. A little seltzer water. Felt like I was losing my voice. It would not be good. All right, well, maybe we will give that background a try. Since we got our brush here, why not, right? Let's see if we can make it happen. If it doesn't work, we'll start over. We'll do something else, but let's see if we can make it go. Got some. Yeah, I'm gonna hold off. I'm pulling, it's bending the line, so we're gonna see if we're gonna do that afterwards. So we'll work on the next panel. Let's move this thing up. Do a little erasing on some of this part here. See, we've got our little shrimp scientists on their little platform conducting their experiments. But yeah, let's move this out of the way because we got to move the paper up so that you can hopefully see what I'm doing. These next panels, so there's still something in the way, of course. In this panel, we're just trying to exaggerate his reaction to what Professor Prawn is telling him. He's not super pleased by it, obviously. It would be my neighbors slamming the door. And sounded like swearing at each other. But hey. I apologize if that bothered anyone there. Ruined their dinner while they were hanging out. Broke their concentration. Sometimes I get sped up and I'm not seeing the piece as well as I need to. That's one thing that I definitely run into when I'm working. What I mean by that is I generally have a good sense of the depth, the perspective, the anatomy, like kind of all balancing in my head all at once. And I'm trying to maintain that throughout the production of the piece so that I'm drawing the right lines and stuff. And I'm not just making lines for line's sake that have no purpose. And in Undersea Hero, if you're ever drawing the characters or you're just goofing around in your sketchbook and you're like, hey, I wonder what it's like to draw this character or whatever, it's always okay to make a graphical choice over an illustrative one. What I mean by that is like right here, if you see the nose, like nobody's nose comes to a perfect point like that. But in a comic book, in a cartoon, in a drawing, you can do that. I also want to exaggerate, like, there's a lot of just stretching and moving and pulling of different pieces of his face here in this shot. sorry. There's like a piece of my desk preventing me from sliding this thing up any further. That it gets stuck on something. Let's see if we can see if that's better. Inking is something that originally was added as part of the process, as part of actually making it so that it would print better, because they needed it in order to engrave the plates for the printing. There was a point where it just became a tradition more than a necessity. That's kind of like where we're at. That's more where we're at now. Because if you don't want to ink your comic book, if you're making one right now, you don't have to. You can pencil it, you can watercolor it, you can do anything. There's the printing now, or just digital applications make it so that you can do whatever you want, and it'll reproduce, a million times better than it used to. I don't want to keep making lines just for the sake of adding lines. Once the expression is in and we've got enough of it there, some of the coloring will do some of the work for us. But we do have to have the structure. We've got to have that basic skull shape in, and then kind of bend the meat around on top of it. Let me take a quick peek at this in the mirror. You have to come out just a little bit. The bend in one of the lines is too neutral, so we have to come out like this. Up here, I just wanted this to be in all black. One of the things I like to do when I have all this extra space I have to fill, so I'll take out my inkwell like this, and I'll grab my just eyedropper and just throw a few drops on there. And then it makes it so that all I'm doing is kind of like mushing it around instead of having the pen draw it from the well, which will sometimes dry out the bristles and it takes longer. If I'm just filling it in, this is a good technique to use. Time saver. Don't have to go back and forth. Just be mindful not to bump into the wet ink with your hand as you're coming across it. That's something that if you look at the underside of my hand, it's always got ink and stuff on it from drawing. Even just little sketches, the underside of my hand will get dirty. A little bit more. I probably should have used a couple of geometric shapes in this area behind them, but again, there's a speech bubble that'll be a balloon that'll be right here. It's a balloon. Balloon has a little tail. Bubbles don't have tails, and these are dialogues, so they have the tails. That's how tired I am. But I have to keep working every night until this thing is done. It's going to be a long several months. All right. Got that filled in. I'm going to use the small Faber-Castell to work on this very small background face of Jan-O-War. Again, these lines are so small that when they are shrunk down, 40% for reproduction, that they'll lose some of their stability, their structure. It'll tighten it up a little bit, so it can give you a little extra leeway if some of the lines don't look like they have the tightness that you're looking for. I actually find that when I'm working on a line drawing digitally, that when the lines are too tight, it looks completely lifeless to me. I don't like when someone's trying to fool me that it's not a drawing. That's not the type of artwork that I generally like. I like when both the viewer and the artist know that it's a drawing and they're both in on it. Quiet crowd tonight. I don't have any long-winded stories to share. I think my longest story of the night was just talking about how I was excited to start cutting up grocery bags and using those as drawing paper. Hey Gregory, I am tired, but I'm doing all right. I've got to keep working. So whether I'm on the stream or not, I've got to keep working on this page. I just don't have a ton of stories right now. I'll try to think of one. I did pick up some comics, like I said. I picked up the first appearance of Zula from my buddy Jonathan, who's in the stream. Thank you, Jonathan. And I picked up the last issue of the Conan the Barbarian Marvel series, which I've never read. So, because it's always been one of the few issues of the series that's expensive. And I just kind of hadn't prioritized it, my collection. And I hadn't bought any of the reprints of the trades or anything like that. So, just kind of hoping I'd find a deal. And I found a copy the other day, just in the back issue bin of Time Capsule Comics. It has been a long day. Like I said, got up like 5:15, 5:30. But we press on. We're only going to be going for a little bit longer. If we get this Professor Prawn done, I'd be very happy. I would be very happy if we got this panel mostly done, this panel done, and then this panel done. That would be a lovely evening in my book. But I appreciate checking in. But that's how it goes. I gotta work and then work and work and work. So oh yeah, absolutely. And there are issues I hadn't read, so they're in my to be read pile. I will probably read them this week. I think I'm caught up on the Titan issues. Okay, have all of those. I do not have a complete run of the Marvel books, and I don't have a complete run of the Dark Horse books, but I did really enjoy the Dark Horse books a great deal, especially the King Conan issues that Tomas Giorello drew and Tim Truman wrote. I thought that Tim Truman was a fantastic writer for Conan. And they made some wonderful comics. Ink that shrimp, is what Desiree says. All that time growing up and dreaming that one day I would get to ink a scientific, evil, mad scientist shrimp. I'm sure the dream wasn't that developed in my youth, but it was there, fostered by all those years of Looney Tunes and the Muppets. And there were lots of shows that were with like funny animal types when I was a kid, like Rocco's Modern Life. I always liked that show. Yeah, I totally agree. The Dark Horse series was very good. Carrie Nord and Kurt Busiek started it off with a bang, I thought, and then you know, the one character that I wish they had done more with was Solomon Kane. They did a few mini series, but it was I don't know. I didn't like the writing so much on them. I know Titan's planning on doing something. I think Pat Zurcher's doing the artwork. I think either that or like the old days, they'll put him in the new Savage Sword book that they're working on. Let me stand up for a little bit. Maybe that'll help me stay focused. Got his little evil shrimp lab coat. For whatever reason, the evil scientist still has the lab coat. Maybe there's some sort of phobia that it's playing off of. I don't know. Something evil, no doubt. Evil purposes. I like Solomon Kane. Yeah, I mean, I like some Cull books. The Severin books and the Plug books are wonderful. Some of the other issues are a little hit or miss. Then they did like the big prestige ones in the '80s, like John Buscema, inked by Klaus Janson on some of that stuff. That was really cool. Big Klaus Janson fan. Got to sit next to Klaus at Fan Expo New Orleans last year, which was right around this time last year. Did not go back this year. I have not signed up for any of excuse me, the fan expos as of yet this year, so I have no idea if I will be at any of them. Red Sonja again has had an interesting publication history. The Marvel series. She showed up in like Cull and the Barbarians by those Howard Chaykin stories that he did. The original origin. Those were good. Well, add our little motion lines here. These ones are a little easier because they're just like, they're small. Because he's a shrimp. They don't have to be perfect. Just get them in there. There we go. And again, there will be a balloon here as he's speaking. So if we can pull off some of this pencil here, and then I think we can probably pack it in for the night. 10 minutes early. So I think that's pretty good progress. We got these two panels done, and then we got most of this one done. And when I get off the stream, I'm gonna finish this little background. So I'll finish this one. So we'll have 3 panels done tonight. That's pretty good. It means we got 2 to finish tomorrow, and then I'll be able to send this off to get the flats done, and it'll be on its way to being colored. So we are producing pages for the Undersea Hero Kickstarter. That's my official update. I don't know how often people want me to put updates in the Kickstarter campaign itself. I'll start doing that this weekend, but I don't know, maybe people can give me an idea of how regular they want those updates in addition to like our Wednesday night just chatting about it. So, well, I hope everybody has a lovely night, lovely weekend. And yeah, I think next week we'll probably be working on more Undersea Hero. I'm not sure, but very likely. But yeah, you can take a look at that. There's some of the close-up. Oh, okay, so people expect a weekly update on there. Hey, very cool, Michael. I will catch everybody later, and thanks for hanging out with me. So good night, everybody. See ya.